In the village of Umuese, nestled deep within the valley where the red earth kissed the roots of the giant Iroko trees, the sun did not simply shine, it ruled. It beat down upon the thatched roofs and the dusty paths with a heaviness that demanded respect. In Umuese, beauty was currency and strength was law. To be born a man was to be born with a voice. To be born a beautiful woman was to be born with a price. But to be born Adane was to be born invisible. Adane was not merely plain. She was a mistake of nature, or so the villagers whispered when they thought she was out of earshot. She was tall, but not with the regal stature of the chief's daughters. She was gaunt, her limbs stretching out like dry cassava stems seeking water. Her skin was the color of charcoal that had burned too long, patchy and uneven, and her teeth grew in a chaotic rebellion. But her eyes were large, liquid, and filled with a sorrow so ancient it seemed to predate her birth. The village of Umuese was a place of loud laughter and louder drums, but Adane lived in silence. She was 25 years old, an age by which most women in the village had 3 children tied to their backs and a husband to cook for. Adane had only her goats and the weaving loom her late grandmother had left her. "Look at the scarecrow," the young men would jeer as she walked to the stream, balancing her clay pot with a grace that went unnoticed. "If you marry her, you will wake up screaming, thinking a spirit has entered your hut." The women were crueler, for their cruelty was wrapped in fake pity. "Oh, Adane," they would say, adjusting their vibrant wrappers. "Don't worry, perhaps a blind man from the neighboring village will come one day. The gods are mysterious." Adane would lower her head, letting her unkempt hair shield her face, and walk faster. She learned early that tears were a waste of water in the dry season. She swallowed her pain until it became a hard stone in her belly, heavy and cold. Hey, sorry to interrupt your listening for just a moment. If this story is speaking to you so far, I'd be really grateful if you'd subscribe and support the channel. It helps me keep creating more stories like this for you. Thank you. Her only solace was the craft of weaving. Her fingers, though bony and rough, moved with the delicacy of spider legs. She wove patterns that mimicked the flow of the river and the flight of the hawk. But because she was the weaver, people bought her cloth for a pittance, refusing to believe that beauty could come from hands so unlovely. There was, however, one flicker of light in her dark world. His name was Obina. Obina was a woodcarver, a man of few words and gentle hands. He was not the strongest wrestler in the village, nor the wealthiest, but he had a calmness about him that soothed the air around him. He saw things in wood that others missed, the spirit inside the log waiting to be freed. One evening, as the Hamatan wind began to blow dust through the village, Obina stopped by Adane's hut. She was outside weaving a complex pattern of indigo and white. "The spirits guide your hands, Adane," he said softly. Adane jumped, nearly snapping a thread. She looked up, expecting a stone or an insult. Instead, she saw Obina's warm brown eyes. I am just weaving, Obina," she stammered, pulling her wrapper tighter around her thin frame. "It is not just weaving," he corrected, squatting down to examine the fabric. "You tell stories with the thread. This pattern here, it looks like the river during the rainy season." Adane's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. No one had ever looked at her work with such reverence. No one had ever looked at her without flinching. For 3 moons, Obina visited her. They did not speak of marriage. They spoke of colors, of the texture of wood, of the songs of the night birds. For the first time, Adane felt the stone in her belly soften. She began to hum as she walked. She began to stand a little straighter. But Umueze was a village of eyes and tongues. The gossip started in the market. "Have you seen? The woodcarver is bewitched." "By whom? The chief's daughter?" "No, by the scarecrow, Adane." Laughter rippled through the stalls like a contagion. It reached the ears of Obina's mother, a formidable woman named Mama Nkechi, whose tongue was as sharp as a machete. The confrontation happened in the village square, beneath the great Udala tree. It was the day of the New Yam Festival. The drums were thundering, and the maidens were dancing, their waists adorned with beads, their skin glowing with camwood oil. Adane stood at the very edge of the crowd, hidden in the shadows, watching Obina. He made a move to walk toward her, a smile on his face. Suddenly, Mama Nkechi stepped into his path, her hands on her hips. The music didn't stop, but the crowd around them fell silent, sensing blood. "Obina," she screamed, her voice cutting through the festive air. "Are you true? Are you throwing your lineage into the dust? You walk toward that thing?" She pointed a finger at Adane. "Mother, stop," Obina pleaded, his face flushing. "She is a woman of worth." "Worth?" Mama Nkechi spat on the ground. "She is a curse. Look at her. If you bring her to my compound, the ancestors will weep. Her womb will produce monsters. Her face will sour the palm wine." The crowd erupted in laughter. Young girls giggled behind their hands. Men shook their heads in mock sorrow. "Obina," Mama Nkechi warned, her voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "If you take another step toward her, I will strip naked and curse you this very day. I will disown you before the earth goddess." Obina froze. In Umweze, a mother's curse was a death sentence. He looked at his mother, then he looked across the square at Adane. His eyes were filled with agony, with apology, and with helplessness. He took a step back, then another. Adane felt the world tilt. The stone in her belly didn't just return, it exploded, sending shards of ice through her veins. He had stepped back. He had chosen safety over her. She turned and ran. She ran past the drummers, past the dancers, past the huts. She ran until the sounds of the festival faded into the rhythmic chirping of crickets. She ran into the forbidden forest, where the trees grew twisted and the air smelled of wet decay. She collapsed at the foot of a massive cotton tree, weeping until her throat was raw. She cursed her face. She cursed her mother for birthing her. She cursed the gods for carving her from rejected clay. "Why?" she screamed into the darkness. "Why? Give me a heart to love if you give me a face that kills it." "Be careful what you ask the darkness, child. It might answer." The voice was like the sound of dry leaves crushing underfoot, brittle, old, and dangerous. Adane scrambled back, wiping her eyes. Standing before her, illuminated by a shaft of moonlight that pierced the canopy, was an old woman. She was tiny, bent over a gnarled staff. Her skin was a map of wrinkles so deep they looked like cracks in the earth. One of her eyes was milky white, while the other was a piercing, unnatural violet. Who are you?" Adane whispered. The old woman cackled, a sound that made the hair on Adane's arms stand up. "I am Mama Ojoro. I am the one the desperate find when they have run out of road." She hobbled closer, sniffing the air around Adane. "I smell rejection. I smell the salt of tears shed for a man who has no spine. I smell the desire to be seen." Adane looked down. "I just want to die." "Lies!" Mama Ojolo struck the ground with her staff. "You do not want to die. You want to be worshipped. You want them to choke on their laughter. You want to be the sun that burned their eyes." Adane remained silent. The old woman spoke the truth that Adane was too afraid to whisper to herself. Mama Ojoro reached into the folds of her tattered rags. "I have something for you, daughter of sorrow, something that was old when the river was young." She pulled out a bundle wrapped in banana leaves. With trembling hands, she unfolded it to reveal a pair of panties. They were white, not the white of wool or cotton, but the blinding, impossible white of the moon itself. They shimmered in the dark, radiating a faint, pulsating light. The fabric looked like liquid silk, moving as if it were alive. "What is this?" Adane asked, mesmerized. "This," Mama Ojoro whispered, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss, "is the veil of the goddess. It is not cloth, it is glamour woven into form." She shoved the garment toward Adane. "Take it, wear it. The moment this touches your skin, the clay will be reshaped. You will be the desire of every man and the envy of every woman. Kings will crawl through mud to touch the hem of your wrapper. The wood carver will weep blood to have you back." Adane reached out, her fingers brushing the cool supernatural fabric. It felt electric. "But," Mama Ojoro said sharply, grabbing Adane's wrist with a grip of iron, "there is a rule. Magic always has a rule." "What rule?" "You must never take them off," the old woman said, her violet eye boring into Adane's soul. "Not to bathe, not to sleep, not to make love. It must remain on your skin. As long as you wear it, you are the goddess. But if you remove it, the debt comes due." "What happens if I remove it?" "Do not ask questions you do not want the answers to. Do you want the power or not? Do you want to go back to being the scarecrow?" Adane thought of the laughter in the square. She thought of Obina stepping back. She thought of the lonely years stretching out before her like a desert. "I will take it," Adane said, her voice trembling. "Good," the old woman cackled. She pressed the white panties into Adane's hands. "Go home. Wear them tonight. Tomorrow Umuize will not know the sun has risen, for they will be looking only at you." As Adane clutched the garment to her chest, a sudden wind whipped through the forest, blinding her with dust and leaves. When she opened her eyes, Mama Ojoro was gone. Only the smell of ozone and old earth remained. Adane walked home in a daze. Her hut was dark and cold. With shaking hands, she stripped off her rough clothes. She stood naked in the darkness, feeling the biting air on her skin. She looked at the white panties. They seemed to hum in the silence. She stepped into them. The sensation was instantaneous. It wasn't just soft, it was euphoric. A rush of heat flooded her body, starting from her hips and shooting up to her scalp and down to her toes. It felt as though invisible hands were molding her flesh, smoothing rough edges, filling hollows, stretching bone. The pain was exquisite, a burning ecstasy that made her arch her back and gasp. She collapsed onto her mat and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. Adane woke to the sound of birds. The sun was streaming through the cracks in her wall. She felt different, lighter. The constant ache in her joints was gone. She stood up and walked to the small cracked mirror she kept in the corner, a mirror she usually avoided. She gasped. The sound was not her own. It was melodic like a flute. The reflection staring back at her was not Adane, or rather it was Adane but perfected. Her skin was no longer patchy charcoal. It was polished ebony, glowing with an inner luminescence. Her chaotic teeth were now straight and white as cowries. Her eyes were still large, but they were framed by thick lashes and held a mystery that was captivating rather than sorrowful. Her body, she ran her hands down her sides. The bluntness was gone. In its place were curves that defied logic, a waist that a man could span with his hands, hips that swayed with promise, breasts that stood firm and proud. She was not just beautiful, she was terrifyingly perfect. She looked down. The white panties were there, hugging her hips, invisible under her skin, yet undeniably present. They felt like a second skin, comfortable and secure. Adane dressed in her best wrapper, though now even the faded cloth looked like royal fabric against her skin. She stepped out of her hut. The first person to see her was a young boy herding goats. He took one look, dropped his staff, and fell to his knees, mouth agape. She walked toward the stream. A group of women were washing clothes, their chatter loud and sharp. As Adane approached, the chatter died. One by one they turned. Soap slipped from their hands and floated downstream. Who is that? One whispered. Is it a spirit? Adane smiled. The power of that smile hit them like a physical blow. Good morning, sisters, she said. Her voice was like honey poured over warm bread. A collective gasp went through the group. Adane? It was Neka, the village beauty, the one who had tripped Adane many times. Neka looked at Adane, and for the first time, Adane saw pure, unadulterated fear in Neka's eyes. Neka looked down at her own reflection in the water and saw nothing but dust compared to the sun standing before her. By the time Adane reached the market, the news had spread. The scarecrow had become the morning star. Men abandoned their stalls. The palm wine tappers slid down from their trees. The elders stopped their council meeting. A crowd formed around her, parting like the Red Sea as she walked. Adane, a voice called out. She turned. It was Obina. He looked disheveled, his eyes wide with shock. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring his mother who was tugging at his arm. Adane, he breathed, reaching out a hand. What happened? You are... I am Adane, she said coolly. She looked at his hand, the hand that had failed to hold hers yesterday. She felt a strange coldness in her chest. The love she had felt for him was there, buried deep, but it was overshadowed by a new, intoxicating sensation. Power. You are magnificent, Obina whispered. Please forgive me for yesterday. I was a coward. I see you now. Adane laughed. It was a beautiful sound, but it lacked warmth. You see the rapper, Obina, not the woman. Yesterday, I was the same woman, but you stepped back. Today, the clay is smooth, so you stepped forward. She turned away from him. The rejection tasted sweet, like ripe mango. Before the sun set that day, 7 suitors arrived at her hut. By the end of the week, there were 50. They came from Umueze, from the river clans, from the distant cities. They brought yams, goats, gold, and promises. Adane chose carefully. She did not choose Obina. She chose Chief Ikem. Chief Ikem was a man of immense wealth. He was loud, boastful, and had 3 wives already, but he promised Adane that she would be the Lolo, the first wife, the queen of his compound. He promised her gold chains for her neck and servants to wash her feet. Adane married him, not for love, but for vengeance. She wanted to show the village that the scarecrow could own the world. The wedding was the grandest Umueze had ever seen. Cows were slaughtered and wine flowed like the river. Adane sat on a high throne resplendent in coral beads. She saw Mama Nkechi in the crowd looking bitter and small. She saw Neka crying in the shadows. She saw Obina standing by a tree, looking not at her beauty, but into her eyes with a sadness that made her look away. Life in Chief Ikem's compound was lavish. Adane did no work. She sat on plush cushions eating delicacies. At night, Ikem was voracious. He worshipped her body. He told her she was a goddess. But the warning of the old woman echoed in her mind. Never take them off. It was easy at first. She bathed alone, locking the door. She dressed quickly. In the dark of the bedroom, Ikem was too consumed by lust to notice that she never fully unclothed. He didn't care. The touch of her skin drove him to a frenzy. But soon the consequences began. It started with Ikem's obsession. He ceased to attend to his business. He stopped visiting his other wives. He sat by Adane all day, staring at her, stroking her arm. He became paranoid. If another man looked at her, Ikem would fly into a rage. He built a high wall around the compound to hide her. Then the sickness came. Ikem, once a bull of a man, began to wither. His skin turned grey, his hands shook. It was as if Adane was a vampire, and every time he touched her, her vitality was sucked into the white panties, feeding the magic that sustained her beauty. Adane grew more radiant as he grew weaker. Her skin glowed with a terrifying luster. She felt energized, powerful, while her husband wasted away. "You are killing him," the other wives whispered, terrified of her. "You are a witch." Adane ignored them. She felt the panties tightening around her waist, pulsing with a rhythm that matched her own heart. She tried to ignore the guilt. "This is the price," she told herself. "Men use women. Now I use him." 6 months after the wedding, Chief Ikem died. He died in his sleep, looking like a dry leaf while Adane woke up beside him, blooming with health. She inherited everything: the wealth, the lands, the power. She was the richest woman in the region, but the hunger of the Panties was not satisfied. After the mourning period, Adane married again, this time a wealthy merchant from the city named Emeka. Emeka was kind, laughing, and full of life. He took her to the city, away from the whispers of Umueze. But the curse followed. Emeka became obsessed. He spent his fortune buying her jewels she didn't need. He neglected his trade, and then he began to fade. The cough started, then the weakness. Adane watched with horror. She realized now that the Panties were a parasite. They gave her beauty, yes, but they fed on the life force on those who loved her, those who lusted after her. One night, in their city mansion, Adane stood before a full-length mirror. She looked at her perfect body. She hated it. She touched the waistband of the white panties. "I will take them off," she whispered. "I have enough money now. I can be ugly and rich. I don't need this." She hooked her thumbs into the waistband and pulled. They didn't move. She pulled harder. It was like trying to pull off her own skin. The fabric seemed to fuse with her flesh. Panic rose in her throat. She clawed at the fabric, her nails tearing at the silk. Pain, white hot and searing, shot through her body. "Do not take off the underwear," the old woman's voice cackled in her memory. She grabbed a pair of scissors. She tried to cut the fabric. The steel blades snapped as if they had bitten into diamond. She was trapped. She was a prisoner in a cage of beautiful flesh. Emeka died 2 weeks later. Adane returned to Umueze a widow twice over. She was now feared. They called her the Black Widow, the eater of men. No one dared look her in the eye. Her beauty was now sharp, dangerous, blinding. She retreated into her walled compound. She had gold, she had silk, she had servants who trembled when she spoke, but she was more alone than she had ever been as the scarecrow. The years passed. The panties grew tighter. They burned her skin now, a constant low-level agony that reminded her of her deception. She could feel them pulsing, demanding more. They wanted another husband. They wanted more life to consume. But Adane refused to marry again. She locked the gates. One rainy night, a knock came at the heavy wooden gate. The servants were afraid to open it, so Adane went herself. She cracked the gate open. Standing there, soaked to the bone, was Obinna. He was older now. His hair was flecked with grey. His face was lined with the marks of time and sorrow. He held a simple carving in his hand, a small wooden bird. "What do you want?" Adane asked, her voice hard. "Do you want to die like the others?" "I came to give you this," Obinna said, holding out the bird. "I carved the air with your weaving once. I carved this to remember the woman who did that." Adane looked at the bird. It was crude compared to the gold she owned, but it was alive with spirit. "Why are you here, Obinna? Everyone knows I am cursed." "I am not everyone," he said. He looked at her, really looked at her. "And I know that the woman standing before me is wearing a mask." "This is my face," she spat. "No," Obinna said softly. "This is a painting, a very beautiful painting, but it is cold. I miss Adane. I miss the woman who hummed when she wove. I miss the woman whose eyes held the truth." "She's dead," Adane said, tears pricking her perfect eyes. "The village killed her. Your mother killed her. You killed her when you stepped back." "I know," Obinna said, dropping to his knees in the mud. "And I have paid for that cowardice every day for 10 years. I married a woman I did not love to please my mother. She left me. My mother is dead. I am alone. But I would rather die at the feet of the real Adane than live another day without telling her that I loved her, not this golden statue. Ha! Adani trembled. The white panties burned hotter than fire. They sensed the threat. This was not lust. This was not greed. This was something the dark magic could not consume. Distinct, selfless love. The pain became unbearable. Adani screamed and fell to her knees. Adani! Obina reached for her. Don't touch me, she shrieked. It will kill you. I don't care. Obina grabbed her hands. The moment his skin touched hers, a shockwave threw them apart. Adani felt the panties constricting, squeezing her internal organs. They were trying to kill her, to preserve the secret. Help me, she gasped. I have to take them off. How? Obina scrambled to her side. I can't. They won't come off. Obina looked at her waist. He saw the faint, unearthly glow of the white fabric through her wrapper. He didn't understand the magic, but he understood wood, and he understood knots. Adani, listen to me, he said, his voice fierce. Whatever hold this has on you, it is rooted in your fear. You took it because you thought you were nothing. You have to believe you are something without it. I am ugly, she cried. I am the scarecrow. You are the weaver, Obina shouted over the rain. You are the one who sees the river in the thread. You are beautiful. Reclaim yourself. Adani looked into his eyes. She saw no fear. She saw no greed. She saw only a mirror reflecting her soul, not her skin. For the first time in 10 years, Adani wanted to be herself. She didn't want the power. She didn't want the beauty. She wanted the peace of the loom. She wanted the warmth of Obina's hand. She stood up, the pain blinding her. She reached into her wrapper and grabbed the waistband of the white panties. No, the voice of Mama Ojoro screamed in her head. You will be dust. You will be nothing. I am Adani, she screamed back. She didn't pull with her hands. She pulled with her will. She rejected the gift. She rejected the vanity. She rejected the easy way out. With a sound like tearing metal, the white panties ripped. A blinding flash of violent light exploded from her body. The explosion threw Obina back against the gate. The house shook. The windows shattered. Adani fell to the ground, writhing in agony as her body rearranged itself. It was the reverse of the pleasure she had felt years ago. Bones shortened, skin roughened, teeth shifted. The perfect curves melted away into gaunt angles. The smooth ebony skin broke into patches of charcoal. It lasted an eternity, and it lasted a second. Then silence. Only the sound of the rain. Adani lay in the mud, naked, shivering, stripped of all her glory. She was Adani the scarecrow again. The magic was gone, the white panties were gone, dissolved into grey ash that washed away in the rain. She curled into a ball, hiding her face. She heard footsteps. Go away, she croaked. Her voice was no longer a song. It was the scratchy, broken voice of her youth. Don't look at me. Obina knelt beside her. He took off his shirt and draped it over her trembling shoulders. I told you I was looking for Adani, he whispered, brushing a lock of wet matted hair from her face. He lifted her chin. He looked at her patchy skin, her crooked teeth, her tired eyes. There you are, he smiled, tears mixing with the rain on his face. Welcome home. Adani sobbed, but this time the stall in her belly was gone. The next morning, the village of Umueze woke to a scandal. The wealthy widow had vanished. In her place, in the grand compound, lived the scarecrow and the woodcarver. The villagers were confused. Some said the widow was a spirit who returned to the sky. Some said Adani killed her. But when they saw Adani walk into the market holding Obina's hand, wearing simple cloth, they fell silent.
She was ugly, yes. Even uglier than before, perhaps, worn by the years of magic. But she walked with the regal bearing of a queen. She looked them in the eye, and they looked away. Adane gave away the wealth. She gave the lands back to the families of the husbands the Panties had consumed. She kept only the loom and the carving tools. She and Obina lived a simple life. They were not rich, but they were full. Adane wove tapestries that were famous across the land, cloth that seemed to shimmer with a wisdom that could only come from someone who had worn the sun and chosen the shadows instead. She never went back to the forbidden forest, but sometimes when the wind blew through the iroko trees, she could hear the faint cackle of Mama Ojoro. Adane would smile, touch the rough skin of her own arm, and keep weaving. She had learnt the lesson that Umweze refused to learn, that the vessel is clay, and clay breaks, but the spirit is fire, and fire, if tended well, burns forever. And in the evenings by the fire, Obina would look at her, really look at her, and Adane knew that she was wearing something far more powerful than the white panties. She was wearing love, and she would never take it off. The elders say, a painted calabash may dazzle the eye, but if it holds poison, it is useless to the thirsty man. Adane learned that true beauty is not the paint we show the world, but the water we carry within. Do not envy the masquerade for its colorful robes, for you do not know the heat the dancer endures inside. Be content with who you are, for the applause of the market square fades with the setting sun, but the peace of a true heart warms the heart forever. If this story touched your spirit, do not keep the wisdom to yourself. Please subscribe to our channel to join us under the storytelling tree for more tales, and share this video with a friend so you have one more mystery to discuss over dinner. What would you have done with the gift? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time.